Well, I was just listening to some of these odd stories, and one was about this guy. He went up to Alaska to this cabin, and I think his name was Vladimir something. And he hiked in 14 miles to get to this cabin. Now his phone went out. There was no way to charge it. He couldn't get messages out. And he was at this cabin, and his friends got word because they didn't hear anything from him. Well, one of his friends had this plane, and he went to see if he saw him, and he went and he was circling. He took provisions, he dropped them out there. He saw, that the cabin, there was smoke going, and Vladimir came out and waved to him, and he got the provisions, etc. Well, another month went by, and of course they hadn't heard a thing from him. And he's wondering what happened with him. Well, he flew out again, dropped provisions, but there was no fire there. And so he got really concerned. So he went back, he hired a helicopter, he went out and found out that the cabin was boarded up from the outside. There's no fire, nobody there. He goes inside the cabin and there's nobody there. Things look fine, except for he sees this firewood, and there were these things written on the firewood. And it was one, this smells like frankincense, don't burn, and just, odd things on it. So he left, and they didn't find this guy. Well, I did pull the cards on it, and it looks like he had a total mental breakdown. He was not able to contact anyone. And above it, I got the card for the authority. One was an investigation, or, being a lone hermit, and the other side was the devil. So you put those three together, being alone, this religiosity in the devil, and it looks like an inability to contact family or anyone. The light on that was that he had an absolute mental breakdown. Absolutely went crazy. Now you get some of them, they go into that feeling of demonic, or they go into that kind of a schism, and that's what it looked like. He was alone, couldn't get a hold of anybody. The silence and things started eating away at him, and he just went off his rocker into that, religiosity and the dark drama that sometimes they go into. And he had an absolute mental break and left, boarded up the cabin, and was never seen again. So eventually they'll be out there and they'll find his bones somewhere out there. But yeah, he absolutely had one of those psychotic breaks. It was a psychosis that came up for him. And I think it was just that isolation, inability to get a hold of people, and that total isolation where he was at that got to him, and he had that psychotic break and went into, how some of them, when they're taking the drugs and stuff, and they have that psychotic break and they go into that religiosity, some sort of a really strange mentality. That's what it looks like happened with this guy, according to the reading that I was getting. But when you get those 3 points, isolation, the devil, and the religiosity above it, inability to contact the family, etc. He absolutely went into a psychotic break. So on that note, I'll leave that here. It's always interesting when listening to some of these stories, you're pulling the cards to see what the energy is with it. And that's the energy I was getting with it. Psychotic break 100% went into that. Sometimes they go into that and think they're divine, or they think there's a demon, or they think, it's one of those types of scenarios that take place. Yeah, it was the takeaway mentally, what he was carrying. There was a new action, and it was some sort of judgment, okay? So maybe he had something to do with that, again, some sort of judgment coming down, etc. Something to do with that. But some people, if they are in isolation like that, and it was winter coming up, okay, nobody around, 14 miles to hike to even get to a roadway somewhere to get out of there. And yeah, he went into some sort of psychotic break and a judgment. Off he went.